5 years ago, our friend Mimi invited us to become a part of the ballet team. With the addition of our friend Erin, we created a club called the Student Teaching English Program, or STEM for short. We spent 3 years building it from scratch, crafting outreach plans with our supervisors, experimenting with lesson plans, bringing IBSH volunteers to week-long camps all over Taiwan, and standardizing the process for future leaders. It's been powerful in shaping who we are.
Since then, despite exploring other options, we've constantly found ourselves coming back to service. The experiences we've accumulated from learning with our students and our peers have sparked a drive to integrate our ideals into society, and that means taking responsibility for change.
Our world works right now, but needs to be better. It functions for most people, but chooses to leave out many. This demand for change applies to everyone, regardless of our interests, our majors, our careers.
But this can be a daunting task. So today we want to impart what we've learned along our paths in 4 simple steps about how to turn empathy into action.
2 years ago, I was volunteering with a program that pairs up college students to those with disabilities in a vocational music academy. My friend Anne is a couple years older than me, plays the piano, loves to sing, but doesn't talk much. For the first few times I was in her, I tried to communicate through the way I do best, verbally. But after a couple more weeks of observing, trying, and what I thought was failing, I began to realize that she does communicate with me. She holds my hand, waits for me before going to another room, points at my ears to say she loves them, pushes my face back to say she hates them, and laughs whenever I do something stupid. One time, we sat down together in a field of grass. She took off my glasses, pressed her hands together, and looked into my eyes the entire time. It was after that moment I realized that I'd been talking to her, but I haven't been listening to her. And that was a turning point in our relationship. After the realization that listening is a crucial step to communication, and that the two are completely intertwined, I began to throw myself into learning what active listening means for all types of people, not just for me. And because that now means so much to me, I want to learn more and more and educate myself further about things that may not seem as important to me, but are definitely crucial for her.
And this is step 1 to active empathy, Googling. Googling characteristics and traits of the people you care about. Googling ways to get help out. Googling movements, places, identities that the people around us are a part of.
Educate ourselves by relating our search history to who we are and the people we know.
Listen to voices that need to be heard without interrupting them before forming our own thoughts. So then, because we understand these voices better, we can figure out how to ally ourselves alongside these identities.
Through such exposure and active listening, we have a stake in the community. It is impossible to enact change without empathizing to those we care about.
2 years ago, I sat in AP Government and we watched The 13th, a documentary about mass incarceration. And it was the first documentary I didn't really fall asleep in. When I went off to college, I walked into a protest against building a prison in Chinatown and learned that Rikers Island, one of the most infamous prisons in the United States, was just a couple hours away from me. A year later, I decided to volunteer in a program that would supplement education in jails and prisons. During our first session, a classmate and I took a 2-hour-long bus, walked through security, and sat down with 3 women. One asked us to teach her geometry. So we explained to her how to calculate the area of a rectangle, the volume of a cube, and how to tackle word problems. She told us she was doing this for her grandkids, to show them that grandma wasn't a troublemaker, that grandma knew something useful. And that was the moment I really realized that behind every single statistic is a living, breathing person. And once you humanize an issue that way, you can't really digest content in the same way anymore. You realize, you remember that these are real people with real stakes. So I began to read books from authors in the community, research nonprofits working in the field, and have continuous discussions with my friends and family about mass incarceration.
And this is step 2 to active empathy, following. This means commitment to doing those readings, having those conversations, following people on social media whose voices you might not normally pay attention to. And this is not a trend, not something we do only when everyone is watching us.
Because those who are disadvantaged don't have the choice to unfollow. This isn't their feed. This is reality. And we can escape with just a click.
So we have to keep on making the conscious decision to keep following, to keep learning difficult truths.
And this is something we integrate into our daily life, from the way we speak to the way we think. This is a commitment, a huge commitment, but one that is absolutely necessary.
6 months ago, I was volunteering at a company that empowers people with disabilities through life skills and employment training. The staff usually take turns driving me to my half-one bus stop to save a little bit of my time. During one of these drives, I met Dee, a local of the area. When Dee first started driving at this company as her job 20 plus years ago, she was met with backlash by her friends and family. They asked her questions like why she wanted to be associated with these kind of people, why she didn't just take on the job elsewhere and make life easier for herself. But Dee's response was simple, that she wanted to be around good, genuine people. Dee told me that she's learned more about living than she's ever had these past 20 years. She's made friends with clients and staff alike that ask you about your day and truly mean it. And this all came because Dee made the conscious decision to keep on believing and contributing to a community she loves, so that when the foundation started growing, she grew with them.
And this is step 3 to active empathy, DMing. Or in other words, reaching out, taking action, and making difficult decisions even when it seems like most people might not be on our side.
On social media, seeing something offensive on our feeds and telling the person that we know that this is wrong, this is not something that we should do, and to educate them on what's going on.
In real life, this means supporting businesses with a cause, signing petitions, calling representatives, joining protests, making posters, organizing fundraisers, donating if we're financially able to, and volunteering for those we care about.
Through such actions, we are no longer just reading and listening. We are interacting with people. We are actually learning from experiences. And these actions have significant impacts on no longer just ourselves and our social circles, but people beyond that, in bigger communities.
6 months ago, I sat in an Airbnb in Brooklyn with 3 other girls, and we were the new team for the New York chapter of a nonprofit. I was the vice president of service, the first time a position like this had been created, in an effort to more deeply integrate social awareness into leadership, which is something we emphasized often, but didn't really follow through on. So we pioneered our service model, and the keynote event of our term was a virtual discussion about mass incarceration during COVID-19. Before the event, we gathered our speakers and asked them why they attended, why they chose to come, and what they wanted out of the event. It couldn't have been money because we weren't paying them, and it couldn't have been publicity because they were on a much larger scale than we were. Instead, each of them said the same thing. They all believed it was vital to raise awareness in the next generation. There was no expectation that one of us had to give for the other to take. In this scenario, both sides are giving. They gave us exposure to ideas, we gave them youth that can act upon it. And I was struck by the immense strength of kindness, of innovation, and how the world we really want to see can only be shaped by our hands. It's a responsibility.
And that is step 4 to active empathy, creating. More often than not, we do not create because we have a fear of failure, or we have inadequate self-esteem, or we have the belief that because of our age and our lack of experience, we cannot do anything. But that is not true.
Even the attempt to create something is a start. There's no need to immediately take on the huge project of trying to set up an organization. Start by finding friends who share similar passions as you.
Start a club at your school, start a radio show,
Start a podcast, start a blog, and then build your way up.
and then inspire others to do the same so that our impacts can become exponential. One small action may not change the whole world, but it can change one person's life, and that is more than enough.
1 month ago, we didn't really expect to be standing on this stage. And the reason we are now is not just because of the work we've done, but because standing behind us are hundreds of leaders who've put in thousands of hours into creating platforms for us to learn about these issues.
from graphic designers on Instagram to authors in our local bookstores.
From people who build academies, for those with disabilities, to filmmakers of a documentary, to staff that drive us to our bus stop, and to volunteers who work behind the scenes.
From two 19-year-old girls who started Symphony and Aaron when we were 14, and now we stand behind you.
5 years ago, we didn't quite understand these concepts or ideas, and if we were to go back in time, we might do a couple things differently. More research, long-term partnerships, but ultimately, we empathize with the community, with children who are learning a new language, but who didn't have the privilege to feel comfortable in it the way we did. And that empathy was a stepping stone to learning how to Google, how to follow, how to DM, and how to create.
To take action, and to know that there is potential behind the act of being empathetic. There's a power that takes a lifetime to nurture, but doing so only requires 4 simple steps. And you've got endless support to pick you up if you fall. We got your back.
So what are you waiting for? Thank you.